For a long time, I used to say to myself that I'm weak in the deadlift off the floor, but if I can get that sucker off the ground and to mid-shin, I'll lock anything out. And then I remember a few years ago, I was like, oh yeah, you reckon you can do that? It occurred to me that, well, why don't you do some rack pulls and prove yourself? So then I spent a whole bunch of time doing rack pulls and block pulls, and I quickly found out, oh shit, I might have overestimated my ability to pull once the bar is off the ground. That kind of really shook my hypothesis up because, well, you can hit 260 off the floor. And I remember at that time I was hitting 260 off the floor very regularly, like at least once a week. But doing more than 260 off the blocks was very, very difficult. Very difficult. And so then I looked for, ideas of what the explanation could be. Is it that, breaking inertia off of that mid-shin level is very, very difficult and it's not a equal comparison between the floor and the mid-shin? And, to be honest, starting from mid-shin is a bloody awkward thing, man, because you are kind of like most disadvantaged in that position because the bar is very far away from you. There's no speed in the bar. So then you have to create this tightness in the worst possible position of the lift. Which is very difficult, and I really couldn't do much better. I remember I did around the knee, and I think it was around the knee, and I was able to hit 270, I think, at one point in time, some 2 years ago. Then I quickly gave up this idea, and I was like, well, that's not true. So I'll go back to kind of working off the floor. So then I did some time with deficits and all sorts. So now that I'm in this period of training the pushing muscles, the quads, theoretically speaking, I should be better off the floor. If I was to practice the deadlift a little bit and get a little bit more accustomed to it, I should be able to be better off the floor. If we conclude that the bottom portion of a deadlift, the floor, off the floor, is a lot of quad strength. Obviously, leverages play a large part into this, and depends how you go about it. But for me, I always felt like if I can just get, the slightest little bit from the quads and just put a little bit of speed into that bar, that means that I will be in a better position when that bar clears the floor, and I won't be in a rounded position. And then if I'm in a really neutral position in the spine and the pelvis, then I'll be able to finish the lift. So I'm really intrigued to see if this is going to happen. Like say I, in the next week or so, I hit 220 on the squat or something like that. If I hit 217, I've already kind of proven that I'm better in the squat. I'm really intrigued if all this upright squatting will carry over to the deadlift. That's going to be on my mind. Today, obviously, not ideal conditions after a night shift and the rest of it. But as I was telling one of the fellas in the gym, I have been surprised, in this environment after a night shift. And so I decided to do a bit of rack pulling. And I was like, okay, I've kind of not worried about posterior chain for some time. As in, pulling, deadlifting, that kind of stuff. Haven't really made it my focus. I did a bit of good mornings, a few weeks ago or whatever. But it wasn't really a thing. Now I'm very, very much, the leg training is about, quads and glutes, but lower back and, all that stuff that's associated with deadlifts. I haven't been really practicing that movement pattern. And I was able to get to 260 on the rack pull, which kind of screams to me that the strength is the strength. It's kind of there. And then if you just kind of worry about the floor stuff, the mid-shin stuff is going to take care of itself. Today was a hamstring day, which means a glute day as well, and it kind of makes sense to do a rack pull or a good morning or an RDL or something along those lines. I wanted to do that. And I just, opted out for this rack pull. I really wanted to see what it feels like and how it feels. Now, rack pulls for me tend to feel okay when I do a lot of sit-ups, when I do a lot of work with hip flexion. It seems to be that the hip extension also feels pretty good. And it did. I felt strong in my core. I felt strong in that movement pattern. But man, I just wish I could prove to myself. That I can do a little bit more on the rack pull. Because if I could do a little bit more on the rack pull, then it would give me a degree of confidence about the floor. There's so many like conflicting ideas here. Do you kind of focus on the weakness or focus on the strength? Because if you're really honest with everything, no matter what you do, no matter how you go about it, you're not going to be able to change your limb lengths. So for me, I'm always going to struggle off the floor. That's just the way it is, man. I'm always going to be like that. So do you practice that, or do you just go, screw that? I'm just going to get really strong in that mid-shin level. And then what happens on the floor happens on the floor, because I can't grow longer arms. I can't do that. And so no matter what happens, I'm always going to start in that bent over position. And obviously, as we know, the more bent over you are, the more taxing it is for the system to cope, right? So I don't know. I'm kind of conflicted in my thoughts. But in my mind, man, if I can't be better at the thing that I'm supposed to be good at, how do I expect to be better at something that I'm weak at? You know what I mean? Like I think there's a ratio there. There's some sort of ratio. No matter what you do, you're always going to be a little bit better in the strength, which is my mid-shin stuff. So I should be able to produce. I should be able to peak my strength in that mid-shin, and then I should be able to kind of translate that over to the bottom part. I don't know. There's so many different ways of thinking about this stuff. I've seen freaking savages out there who rack pull a shit ton of weight. Now, when I say rack pull, I'm always referring to below the knee. Above the knee is just a leg press, man. Like, I don't put too much value in that. And to be honest with you, I haven't really done a lot of that. Like, if you're doing mid-thigh stuff, whatever. Like, some guys talk about tension on the traps. It's really good for the hypertrophy in there, whatever, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff. That's good. I'm sure there's some benefit to it. But I feel like a lot better use of your time is to work stuff below the knee, because that's where the war is. I mean, for most people, I'm guessing for me. I guess some guys are really bad at lockout, but those guys that tend to be longer armed guys who pop off the floor like nobody's business. I'm on the other side. I struggle off the floor, and the top is just not a conversation at all. So I would love to see, some sort of stuff, some sort of positivity with the bloody mid-shin stuff. I'm intrigued to hear if you have like a massive discrepancy in your lifts. Like, do you have like a huge discrepancy between your off the floor numbers and your mid-shin numbers? Like, do you have like huge discrepancy? Because that to me is like a really interesting thing to think about. Okay, in the deadlift world, if you have a huge rack pull off the mid-shin and you struggle off the floor, that is something worth thinking about. What is going on there? If it's a balanced thing, it's also interesting. But if you're balanced mid-shin and floor, probably you're like me and struggle off the floor. Is that right? I'm just trying to think. I'm trying to like conceptualize what's happening here. Because that's my thing. I know I'm weak off the floor, and I know if I get off the floor nicely, then I'll finish it. But that means mid-shin should be really, really good. But mid-shin starts with, breaking inertia from that mid-shin, which is difficult. I don't know. There's a lot to think about there, a lot to process there. I just feel like it's a really good approach, to go about it. Work on the rack pull and strengthen that. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but I always say these lines to myself, and I try to check myself. Okay, my hypothesis is that I am really weak off the floor, therefore I'm much better mid-shin. Okay, let's test that. Then I go and test it, and I'm like, oh shit, that doesn't sound right. Can I give enough rationale for that to be the case? And I don't know if I can. But my experience with doing deadlifts off the floor is that if I can get it off the ground, it's over. It's over. Yet, my rack pull isn't that much better. Work that shit out, man. Damn it. Appreciate you guys. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.